I have to say, do I say it? There's 2 fetish scenes in this. I said it. Hey, it's Forts here. Forts here. Forts. God. Hey, it's Forrest here. Um, for my New Year's resolution, I was hoping to do like a monthly wrap up about once a month, obviously. I'm hoping to do a monthly wrap up of all the books I've been reading because for the past year, or I guess 2 years in the pandemic, I've been reading a lot more. No, actually, it's the only thing that's been keeping me sane, is reading. So, if that didn't work for you, and it wasn't a waste of time if it didn't work for you, might I add. Okay, so what I'm saying is that I spent a lot of time reading throughout the pandemic, and now I finally feel comfortable enough that I've read enough books consistently each month that I could actually do one of these. I was not a very consistent reader, especially when I was in college. I don't really count assigned books because, well, I don't know why I don't count assigned books. Maybe it's because I didn't pick them out, so it's like if I overanalyzed if I liked it or not rather than critiquing the actual like words on the page and trying to make an essay from them, I think I would have gone insane. But no, I've been pretty consistent with reading like a decent number of books. I did try to read when the pandemic first hit. I was like, I'm going to read all the books that I'm going to catch up on, and then the pandemic's going to end, and I'll have read all the stuff that I meant to read. No, I've been reading books that I want to read, even more so. So it's not like I was planning on doing classics and like reading all the classics while I have the time, and I'm like, no, no. I've been reading a lot of horror, which is what I meant to read anyways because I write in horror. And I've been reading a lot of literary fiction because I just enjoy that genre. And I also like to keep up to date with things. And I feel like literary fiction has more of a hold on publishing and like the reader community, etc., etc. And I also think it's neat. So, but the big thing is that I've been trying to read more romance fiction. Not only because I enjoy it, because I think they're funny, and they're cute. I've been also trying to like, get a better understanding of why people like the romance genre so much. And then I want to get into publishing and the publishing industry. I feel like it would be a glaring mistake if I didn't try to at least dabble as much as I can in romance. It's cute, it's fun, it's a little straight, little straight, little too straight. But nonetheless, so far, especially with Book of the Month, I've been having a lot of fun with it. So, I'm just gonna keep the ball rolling, explore the genre a bit. But this month, I was very happy with the choice that I picked because it's not straight. But I will get to that later because it was the most recent book I read. So, therefore, it will be last. Alright, so, as I was saying earlier, I've been reading a lot more often and more books in a month than I had ever before. I did not read a lot in December. In fact, I don't think I finished a book, which is funny because I had so many plans to when the winter holidays came around. I thought that I would take that time and read more, and instead, I just wanted to hang out with my partner and my sister and just, I don't even know what I did, but I did stuff, but it wasn't reading. So, the key part is that December is my birthday month, and so I was going to be like, treat yourself, but not in the typical way, in the sense of people pick easy reads when they try to treat themselves. I was going to read a book that I was meant to read, and so I picked Pride and Prejudice, and I also picked Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Yeah. If you don't know, this is the book that inspired Blade Runner. Believe, yeah. Yes, because it was published in 1968, so it did inspire Blade Runner, the first one with Harrison Ford as the main character. He's in the second one too, but he's not the main character. That's Ryan Gosling. I read this book and it's set in 2021, which I think is funny because it was the last month of 2021 is when I started it. Did not intend on that, but that's what happened. Anyways, it was pretty interesting because it was more suburban esque. I mean, still set in the city, but it's set in like an apocalyptic city, where like no one's at because everyone was like ditching Earth to go to Mars and stuff. So the idea of Electric Sheep is that the main character, Deckard, which is played by Harrison Ford in the movie, is just this typical dude. He's just like he has a career, he has wants. It's mostly like suburban stuff, specifically the Electric Sheep. That is used as a grounding point of like what do humans want, what do androids want. What happens is that because of all the animals in the apocalypse were starting to go extinct, humanity started adopting weird animals to take care of to make sure that they don't go extinct. Like you legally had to own an animal. And he owns an electric sheep. And the reason why he owns that is because that mandate like ended at some point. Especially I think it was when people started moving to Mars. That's when that ended. And so it became the social norm to have a pet, but then the pets got super expensive. And so people would buy an electric like robot animal from like a specialty store that kind of hid that it was a specialty store, so it made it look like you had a real life animal and you were like being a good community member. But in reality, you had a robot pet. And he has an electric sheep because he can't afford it, and then he finds out that he could kill some androids because that's his job as a Blade Runner. He can kill some androids and they have a bounty, so he was able to like raise enough money to get an actual animal, and that was the plan. And then along the way, interacting with other androids and stuff like that, you kind of follow like this suburban guy who was just like, I do my job, I go home, I make my wife happy, she isn't, and we move on with our day type of guy. Then there was another perspective in the book, and that is from JR. The JR from the movie isn't quite the same. He's just a guy who's been so physically affected by the amount of dust caused by the apocalypse and stuff that he can't move to Mars or another place. And so he's trapped on Earth. It affected his brain chemistry. And so there's like this IQ test that you have to take to be able to move. And he didn't pass it. So then they put him in this subclass system where he wasn't treated as a human being. He was treated as something a little lower. And then he interacts eventually with some androids. And it's interesting because the androids are not just like a lower class being. It's like they keep talking about how because of the rampant extinction of animals on Earth, they're treated even worse than like roaches and crickets and spiders and stuff. Anyways, so that plays an interesting role. One of the big things I wish the movie included was the concept of mercerism, which is the religion that they include in the book. And it's supposed to promote empathy amongst humans. Androids can't use this product for this religion is the driving factor of why they're treated so differently, even though they're created to like blend seamlessly with humans. Anyways, it's really neat and it's a huge part of the book, but I understand it would be kind of difficult to explain in the movie, and especially since they do a good job of understanding empathy and like talking about the differences between humans and androids and stuff like that. In the movie, that it wasn't necessary to include mercerism, but as a book element, it was really interesting, especially how they utilize it in the end. So I thought it was a great book. It was a little hard for me to read, but that's because I just wasn't into reading in December, and I included it in this monthly wrap up because I did not finish it until like halfway through January. I don't really want to do like a rating system unless I specifically included it on Goodreads. And the reason why I don't do that is because I don't necessarily want to do that for really old books because I feel like, I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna pick up an old book, you're gonna read it or not, right? I feel like when you're considering new books, you're in that iffy zone of like, should you read it or should you not? But you don't have enough information about it to be able to like make that judgment. Whereas this has been out since like 1968. So if you've heard of it, then you're either going to read it or not. But I don't think I really have a lot of influence over that other than telling you specific elements. And if you're already intrigued, then you're going to read it. Or you're going to say you're going to read it and put it on your TBR like I did. Honestly, it takes a lot of effort for me to rate anything, even if I see ratings as less of a measurement of how good or bad something is, and more of a measurement of whether I would recommend it or not. So I guess if we're gonna go off of that, I would recommend this book. So let's say it's a 5, or let's say it's a 4. I think 5 would be a little more like my personal favorites. No, let's say it's a 5. I don't know. See, this is why I don't do it. So who knows? That can't really be an answer, right? So let's say 4, I would definitely recommend it to someone. 5, it's my favorite right now. Sure. Okay, moving on. So I read The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. I read Station 11, which is about a pandemic that wipes out humanity, basically. And it's about the post-apocalypse situation, and also about how you got to that point. And then there's like a traveling group of traveling group of theater majors. How about that? I actually read it when I had like this COVID scare where I thought I had COVID, but I wasn't sure, so I was isolating, which was a weird choice on my part, but I did enjoy it. So I went ahead and bought this because this was her newest book since then. And I had no idea what it was about. I actually really liked it. It was kind of one of the reviews that I saw was that, like while I was reading it or something, said it was really meandering. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I didn't mind it. I usually like meandering books. The book is told from multiple viewpoints. So this book is about the viewpoints of several people affected by this Ponzi scheme that happened in like 2008 or so, that had been going on for years. And it's told from various perspectives of like investors and people who are like marginally related to it and people who had no idea about it but were actually really close to the source, etc., etc. But what was interesting is that it was kind of propositioned as a ghost story, and I wasn't really sure where she was going with that because, I mean, the first ghost pops up within at least the first couple of chapters. It sounded like it was supposedly a vision, not necessarily a ghost. So I wasn't super sure where it was going with that. Spoiler alert. Okay, I don't really know if it's a spoiler per se, but what happened is that the latter half of the book was a lot more ghost heavy, which, considering how meandering it was, I would have preferred more ghosts sporadically included in the beginning of the book. I think it would have benefited by having that happen more often, but then I also understand why it wasn't happening because to make it related to the Ponzi scheme, and those affected by it, obviously the aftermath has to come in. So I understand why that happens, so there has to be a build-up. However, I was pitched the book, it feels like, as a ghost story, when I feel like the ghost element is underutilized, I guess, but even though it makes sense. So it wasn't necessarily my favorite book. I suppose, I can't remember what I rated it. At this point, I feel like I would have rated it a 3, like as in you could read it, you could not. It's up to you. Maybe a 4 at parts, honestly, because there was some enjoyable parts, some enjoyable perspectives, but it was also, it's a Ponzi scheme. Like it's still, the wound is still there, so I feel like it's hard to do, like, hard to sell. It's hard to sell. But the hotel perspective was actually pretty neat. I like the concept of what it actually means for the whole story. I got like some Shining vibes, even though that is remotely not like what it's supposed to, how it actually plays out. But I still felt like there was like a ghost of a ghost of a ghost of The Shining, if that makes sense. Moving on. Okay. So I read, finally, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. This was my first Sally Rooney book. I've always been told that Sally Rooney is like a great writer, etc., etc. I did actually purchase a book of hers before. I even read this because of all the hype. It's the newest one, the one with blue, something beautiful world. I don't know. But I was like, maybe I shouldn't read this first. Like, I should read one of her, like, more known books before I read one of her new books, because I feel like I need that perspective first. So I kind of, like, shelved it. And then this came in randomly from the library. Okay, so my nose ring was flipped out. So if that was bothering you, very sorry. It was bothering me too now, looking back of possibly how long that was like that. So I read Conversations with Friends because I believe that was the one that I was first made aware of in terms of Sally Rooney. My God, is it depressing. Very good. Don't get me wrong. Very depressing. Definitely don't go into this book if you're having like a dip in mental health or you're feeling particularly sensitive, especially when it comes to like being a young adult. I think that was my main issue, is that being a young adult in the pandemic, I kind of feel like everything's like slipping past me and it stresses me out. She has a real rough time, okay? And if you're particularly sensitive to feelings of insecurity, if you're particularly sensitive to body image issues, she has a lot of those presented in this book. If you're particularly sensitive to like unstable friendships, honestly, that was one of the biggest stressors for me, is that she had this best friend, and at times she seems cool, and other times she just seems like the worst friend ever. And like what really frustrated me while reading this is that the main character seems to just like take it a lot of the times because she feels like she deserves it, and then she lashes out randomly, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Like, she doesn't react on time. She doesn't react when she should react negatively towards this friend, and she reacts positively towards this friend when she shouldn't. She's constantly apologizing, and this goes for a lot of her relationships, and so that felt a little close to home. It made me upset, honestly. I don't know. I felt like a super downer while reading this, and it made me read it a lot faster than I probably would have, because as I say this, it was also really compelling. The characters were interesting. The story was meandering, but in a literary fiction way, so it wasn't that bad. The perspectives were interesting in the sense of a young woman in a relationship that is doomed to fail with a friendship that is terribly unstable, with a perspective that's terribly unstable, and then you add in the fact that she has medical issues that she discovers. So it's like a recipe for just pain. But the storytelling is really compelling. It's interesting, specifically for Sally Rooney. She doesn't use quotation marks, and somehow that makes the story both more compelling and more confusing, because I can't really tell if these characters are saying things out loud. I can't really tell if they're going to say that snappy, like, inner thought to that person, or if that was actually what they said. And so it made for this, like, really ambiguous reading style where it's like, did she just say that out loud? Oh, wait, no, she didn't. But it's kind of compelling in the sense of, like, what if she did say that out loud? And so you kind of get this dual experience of, like, what if she was actually like her true self, and what if she wasn't? So you get this, like, dual story. And I thought that was a very compelling writing style. very realistic read, and I honestly took a lot from it because I'm working on project, and I took a lot of inspiration from reading this book to try to add some elements that I liked from this story into my own. Frankly, the main character isn't very likable, and she knows that. Because she's only likable in this persona that she gives off. Because she knows that, you get to know how kind of despicable she can be. And then you realize, life is just complicated, right? And so she's in a very complicated situation, and it makes it even more complicated because she's not outright about it. And so it's not necessarily a miscommunication, but it's like she doesn't really act like her own person versus her inner thoughts. And then that blurring of the lines makes it even better of like, who the hell is she really? So it was an interesting character study that I want to take away from since I've read this. Okay, so the final book I read in January was a Book of the Month book. Not sponsored, too small. It's Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. I picked it because I knew it was a queer couple. This is Dahlia, and this is London. London is non-binary, goes by they, them pronouns, which I thought was super interesting to be able to finally see that representation in a book, because I read a lot of old stuff, so I don't really get that representation, even though I do want it. It's just that old stuff compels me. In my exploration of romance, this was... As soon as I knew it was a queer relationship, honestly, I just I hit select for my Book of the Month. And then I looked into it more after I got it, and I realized it was a cooking show basis, which, amazing. I love that idea. So it's a love story set during the filming of a cooking show. So you have these added conflicts that Dolly is a recent divorcee, not too recent, she's ready for romance type of situation. So not just got out of a nasty divorce. No, she's a recent divorcee, and she found love in cooking. And so it's really cute seeing that perspective. It's really cute watching her find herself. Then you have London, who's dealing with the effects of coming out as non-binary and sharing their pronouns on the cooking show, and then dealing with the aftermath of their family and their community learning about this. And then of course they deal with some backlash from viewers and fellow contestants, etc., etc. But was really nice about this particular read, because it's a romance and it's supposed to be that fluffy, candy type of story. You just want to eat it up and have a good time. No pun intended, because it's a cooking show. Pun intended, actually. I take that back. What's interesting about this is that while Anita Kelly could have taken that to that level of this is the extreme conflict, it didn't feel like they were being used for plot. It was just an added conflict, because it's going to be a conflict in that person's life. And so even if it doesn't take a major amount of their life to deal with that conflict, it's not plaguing them every corner of their day, it's still something that they have to deal with on occasion, and they have to deal with it on a wider scale because of this cooking show. The inclusion of it is necessary to give that representation of the actual experience of going by they, them pronouns and being out as non-binary, but it doesn't feel like it's overutilized as a bit. It's not used as a plot device, right? It's used as an actual character conflict that they have to deal with, but it's not the only thing they deal with. I also thought the story was really cute, and they used the cooking show setting really well. Kelly uses the premise of cooking a lot really well. It calls for it, and you have to use it. So they use cooking as a metaphor for love, obviously, as in they share dishes and they help each other and stuff like that, and it's really cute. And then they utilize the fact that it's being filmed as like, you know, a perfect like trope for like, ooh, we can't be caught on camera doing these things, like making goo goo eyes at each other. You know, they want privacy, but they also can't help to do that. So I thought that was really cute. I have to say, do I say it? There's two fetish scenes in this. I said it. One's a foot fetish. Not like that. Like, there's toe sucking. Okay. I didn't think it was bad. Just so you know, though. But the bigger one is that they do play around with food. But I feel like if you're going to make a book about cooking, and it's a romance, I think you have to. Like, you're given an opportunity. I feel like you have to take it. And I also think it's really funny how it's brought up. Sounds sticky. But I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it. I did think the end, I feel like most romance novels do this. The end just kind of gets like a little too serious, I guess. It's like the typical, like, there's a conflict or a miscommunication or a blah 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 that somehow like separates them, or they get angry at each other in like every romance book. And I feel like it's necessary to the plot because once they get back together, you get this triumph. It's kind of like when the music swells, you know? The only way for the music to swell is that it has a dip, right? So it does make sense to me, but then it gets kind of like, I did like the ending. Like, I thought it was cute and stuff, and it wrapped up a lot of things. I'm not a fan of, like, epilogues, but the epilogue was cute. Could I have done without it? Maybe. But, so there was that. And then, I don't know about you guys, but, like, when it comes to romance books and they describe the outfits, I can't tell that, like, since my transition, that maybe I have a poor grasp on what women wear now. I feel like romance novels make that fashion look sound really corny, or like out of date or cringy or something. I don't know what the word is. Anyways, memory card issues. So if it looks a little funny, that is why. Or if my hair looks like it's in a different spot, that's also probably why. Anyways, I just feel like a lot of it seems outdated. Like, there's a lot of circle skirts and, like, Converse, and this book was particularly, like, heavy on that. But again, I don't know if it's me. Like, if I'm the one who has that issue. Do you have that issue? Like, where the fashion's off? It really takes me out. But it's, like, not a huge problem for me. It's just, Converse and skirts just doesn't seem like a thing anymore. And then also another problem I have is when, like, it's too heavy on, like, tech brand names, or specifically brand names. I don't know why, but I just don't want to know what brand of whatever a person is using, or if they're using an Uber. I'm like, I just feel like it might be better to use, like, some sort of called up a taxi via an app or something like that. Like, I feel like I would use alternatives in my own writing and not necessarily use anything that specifically dates it. And I feel like it's a lot in romance, not just this book, but in romance in general. Maybe it's because I'm new to the genre and that, like, is a wanted thing, or I'm just picky, perhaps. But I would say that's mainly my issues with the book. But it also, like, extends to romance, so maybe that's my beef with romance. Pretty mild beef, I would say. Other beef, a little too straight. This book was not that, so that was good. Alrighty, so it's the next day. Camera died. So, off to a great start with this project. Didn't have much else to say. If you're a little unclear on how I felt about Love and Other Disasters, I do have a blog in which I review Book of the Month picks. I'm limiting it to Book of the Months and maybe select other books, or say other Book of the Month X, like, boxes or subscriptions or whatever I come across. But right now, Book of the Month is what I have access to. That is a tangent. Main point is that I have a full write-up for Love and Other Disasters that I have on my blog at itsforesthere.com. I also give my initial thoughts on my Goodreads page for any book I read, unless I have no thoughts, which is often. That wraps up all the books that I read in the month of January, and so I just wanted to have like a little closing for the video so you don't just like end on that when the camera shut off. I'm hoping to do obviously the monthly wrap up every month at the end of the month after, or I guess in the beginning of the next month, so I can make sure I have the full time to be able to cram in all the books that I read. And then I noted in my schedule that I want to do more of a freeform type of video about once a month, and that's basically just like a wild space, like a bingo space, for me to just do whatever the hell I want to do with this channel. So hopefully, like my channel will be more revitalized than it has been in a quite some time. Yeah, so that's the plan. I know you're thinking if I'm doing a monthly wrap up that I might do a TBR, and TBH. I don't like TBRs. It's because I don't like putting those expectations on my leisure reading, even if I do utilize my leisure reading for like YouTube and stuff. I don't know, you've been there, right? I'm keeping it freeform in the sense of what I'm going to read, so no TBRs. I don't find it very enriching to see someone react to a book that they have not read yet. If you have different opinions, please tell me in the comments. Like if you really do want a TBR, maybe I can pick out a couple that I plan on reading that month, and then talk about those, and then throw in stuff that I randomly read otherwise. So that would be like a good meet in the middle, but as of right now, I don't really plan on doing a TBR. However, if you want to do me a favor, what would be a monthly video, other than a monthly wrap-up, that you would like to see or have seen and would like to pitch the idea to me? Because that would be great, but I don't think I have the following at the moment to even have that happen. So we're just gonna roll with it. Yeah. Anyways, when's my next? Alright. So I think in a couple of weeks I'm gonna do like a freeform video, so you can look forward to that. I gotta stop doing that. Yeah. See you then.